Self-analysis required. There should be a self-analysis of that each holds not only as an individual ideal and as a group ideal, but as to what is the belief upon the varied subjects that may be now presented from time to time. And when this decision is reached, how does each react to that each professes to believe? Then, seek to know what self is lacking, even as given in the first 4 chapters of Revelation, as divided in the present. What is lacking in self? Are ye cold? Are ye hot? Have ye been negligent of the knowledge that is thine? Are ye stiff-necked? Are ye adulterous in thought, in act, in the very glories that are thine? First find self and make self right with his God, for the beginning of wisdom is the knowledge of the Holy One, and the answer is within self. On such must all perfect foundations, explorations and plans be builded. In what manner can I further improve my spiritual development? This has been outlined so oft, you only need to look into self and be honest, fair and square with self, as self would have thine fellow man be with thee. Just what line of study should she take up in order to develop most and be able to manifest the better in the flesh? Self. Has the entity succeeded in replacing fear by love to any extent since receiving her life reading? No. How can she best do this? In study of self, and relationships to God and man. Analyze from day to day, or week to week, those things that are expected, not merely of self, but that you will create a condition, an association, an activity in relationships to some others, not merely those of the own household, though it would do well to include them, but bring something of a pleasant surprise, or a pleasant experience, that gives them hope. And it will create health within thine own self. Study those things that hindered, those conditions that made for those innate feelings that come as impulses. Knowing that which has been chosen as the ideal, work towards correcting same, or study to know self, and being true to self in the fields of activity that enable self to give that impulse, or that activity in the minds and hearts of others, will also raise self in all forms of developments. What can this body do, or study, to have a better vision of life and make a better helpmate to her husband and to humanity? Study the book of life as found in human experience, and study self first, as this, make for self, as is the intent in every act, wrote, as why this relationship, why that relationship. Analyze same, and you will see yourself as plain as one looking in a mirror. Self is first to be conquered, to be known. Then establish self, once that control of self is gained, irrespective of those that are felt as inclinations, not separating self as one that would lord it over another, but that one that would manifest abilities within self to aid others. Keeping that as an ideal. Be not only idealistic, have not only ideas, but be an ideal and ensample of that the self would have the other be. First study self. Know innately, physically, mentally, spiritually, what ye desire to do. Know this must be in keeping with the spiritual, the mental and the physical law. For these ye have judged oft, and ye interpret many correctly, though ye may be at quite a variance to the tenets of others. But know the author of thy judgments, of thy faiths, of thy purposes, and know they are not for self alone. For ye will judge these when ye analyze self and the desire or hopes. You will give the affirmation for preparation of our study of wisdom. Our Father, our God, may the light of thy wisdom, of thy strength of thy power, guide, as we would apply ourselves in thy service for others. In his name we seek. Let there be a very careful analysis of each individual as you approach the throne, in self, of God, for the more perfect understanding. For this should be as a crowning experience in the life of each and every one. For the wisdom of the Father is that to be sought which should make each individual free from worry, care, and know within thyself thy relationship to the Father, through the Son, in this experience. God is one, and in the examining of self it is to be, in wisdom then, to realize self, in desire, in purpose, in aim, to be at one with that which is the representing of, the application of, God in the experience of each. Then this necessarily becomes self-examination. Not self-condemnation, nor self-glorification, but, as the mind is the builder, as the will is the meter or measure, and as the law of love is that to be builded, it is wisdom to be at one in same. You each shall analyze yourselves, and that given you as a helpful measure towards your comprehending, or embracing happiness, in your individual experience. You each will find, if it is but applied, that which will enable you to give to others a greater vision of what and how happiness may be in the experience of others. And as doers of the word, and not hearers only, become more and more in accord with that which has been designated as true happiness. Am I recovering my equilibrium mentally and spiritually? How can I further improve my all-round condition? Sit down for a time and analyze self, look into self, see what is the trouble, see how the situations have stacked up with self, from the various associations and connections that have been made, see what the needs and requirements of self are. Then take them to thy Maker. Art thou willing to present all thou hast done to him, and expect him to pay thee in thine own coin of what thou hast paid out? Then, you'll be right. 257 is making every effort to the best of his conscious ability to get his affairs in working order, and on a budget basis. Please advise wherein he is failing to live up to the expectancy of those guiding him and his destiny. Remember, these are making statements that you should analyze, rather than say that 257 is doing this, or that anyone is guiding the destinies. Rather analyze self and the purposes and desires and hopes, and see that these are in a constructive way and manner for the best of self and for all of those interested in the activities of 257, 257's associations, and 257's organization. Oft analyze in self's own inner self, the whys of those desires and hopes, consider as to whether these are in keeping with the spiritual purposes. For, while mind is the builder, it is the purpose, the intent with which an individual applies self mentally, that brings those physical results into materiality. And these should be kept coordinate one with another. For, as has been given, there must be those meetings of self in material manifestation of the ideals and purposes of the spiritual and mental aspirations of an individual. And be not deceived, God is not mocked, whatsoever a man soweth, that must he also reap. And with what measure ye meet, it will be measured to thee again. In what way haven't I in the last year tried to accomplish that? This is not intending to find fault. For, as indicated, analyze self. For, when one disobeys, who is to counsel? Not even the Father reprimands, but the entity cometh under the law and must meet same, when such is done. This ye have well experienced in thine own physical being. It also applies spiritually, mentally, and thus gives reflection in the material things. Analyze self and self's purposes. Please give such advice and counsel as will aid me in getting a better hold on myself, and in meeting the various conditions that arise from time to time. A self-analysis of the desires and wishes, and the fixing of self, as toward some ideal outside of self will enable the body to better meet mentally and materially, those conditions and problems that present themselves from time to time. These, as the body, the mental abilities, will recognize, are necessary, for one to have an ideal to make for the impulse and activities towards working for some conditions as outside of self. As to application of self, the entity has found self the greater problem to conquer, being one who readily gains the correct concept of others whom the entity contacts, and this developed will bring to the entity much satisfaction, for the intuitive forces in self, cultivated in the idea and ideals as is held before self, will enable the entity to gain an insight into others' lives and others' problems, enabling the entity to assist or take advantage of the good or the bad qualities in others. Study self, for in self may one find the answer of all the problems that may confront an entity. 4. The spirit of man with its attributes, whether physical or physical-mental, is a portion of the whole Great Spirit. Hence the answers are all within self's own scope of seeking. And he that seeks will find. 4. From the beginning it has been given, like begets like in spirit, in mind, in body. Hence those that in truth, in earnestness, seek to know his ways, will find the answer in self. In continuing the interpretations of the symbols, and the experiences of John as written to those in the various churches in Revelation, these portions, or the last half of same, as has been indicated, are the application of what is gained by the analyzing of self and the emotions and the effects of activities through the physical being, as is applied by and to the individuals in the application of the truths gained in their material, their mental, their spiritual relations. How can this body improve her spiritual standing for her body's interest? Understand self and self's impulses. Then there may be seen that necessary for the conditions that may need correction or change. For each condition in a life, physical, mental or spiritual, must be met. Delay only makes the conditions the harder to meet. This body has many complicated feelings at different times. How can she settle these conditions in her own mind? By letting that voice from within answer the questions for self. For truly it has been given, my spirit beareth witness with thy spirit, as to the relations in any element or condition. There is first the necessity of an individual taking stock of self, as it were, taking an inventory of self, self's abilities, self's desires, and self's will. To make the will, one with the creative energy, should be the desire of every being. Then, when self has taken this stock of self, and has outlined to self wherein the shortcomings may lie, in the direction, when this is taken as the criterion, that the desire of self should be to make self's will one with the creative energy, whatever one may desire or may in their own minds designate that energy. And then when this is understood in self, then self may find that there is much reason for carrying on, much reason for the introspection of self. Be true to self's convictions. And have convictions. That is, know within self what is desired to be accomplished in the present experience. For the betterment of this understanding, analyze self. Not only mentally, but in meditation write down in 2 columns the answers to these questions. Under one heading, what I believe; under the other, what I would accomplish at this time. Do not do this at once, or all at once, but for several days review that which may be written from time to time. Make erasures, to be sure. For many will appear in self. 4. Know this. To know the truth is to make you free. Truth is as life, a growing consciousness in self. What studies would be best for the entity at this time? The best, as always, is to study self, as to its relationship to the creative forces, and as may be manifest by its relationships to its fellow man. Studies in the material activities may be into international exchange. For with the correcting of the physical, as well as the attitudes of the self as to environs, there may be established, with the return to its homeland, the activities in which there may be, which is so much needed, the better understanding of the needs of nations and their correlated activities. First the body should analyze self, as to its desires, and that it, the body, hopes and desires to accomplish in this experience, not considering for self alone, for when considered in this light, no matter what the results are, or the position obtained, it becomes as a tinkling cymbal. It may blaze for a while, yet this will soon fade, and loneliness will be the result, with being forced to look into self and find self not satisfied. 4. Desire that builds only for aggrandizing of that which will bring for self only fame, or position, or even power, without a purposefulness in same that may be accomplished for another, is but as hollow, and leaves one broken. Look well into self, self's activities, self's thoughts, self's development, and consider if these are really manifesting that the body would prefer to be the full, complete activity of the body, mentally and physically. And alter or pursue according to that analysis self finds there. And in seeking for aid for the analysis of the psychological effect, or psychological conditions, seek rather within self, in line with that which has been the tenets of the spiritual welfare of the body. But for the psychological effects, find in self that to which self has been closing self, those influences from within and from without that would make for a more in line with that the body would develop in its spiritual relations and associations, for these are well for thee, with thee, and will bring about much more contentment. 4. Peace, harmony and well-being is found most in knowing that the ideal is being adhered to, and in filling that place for which one knows, feels, realizes, it has been chosen to express in its daily activities. Where, and from whom, can body get information as to how to become a scientific analyst? Best through the study of self, as in its application to individuals and their reactions to the various forces in physical, mental and spiritual reactions. What are the main studies that make known both the physical and metaphysical activities of the organs of the body, as they represent human experiences? The best of these metaphysical may be studied from the Book of Revelation, as applied to Gray's Anatomy. In what town or city would it be best to locate to apply this knowledge? Let's get in the proper shape to be able to apply it, before we find a place to apply it in. Apply it where you are at present, and then it may be known how to apply it in other places. Where, and from whom, can body get information as to how to become a scientific analyst? Best through the study of self, as in its application to individuals and their reactions to the various forces in physical, mental and spiritual reactions. What are the main studies that make known both the physical and metaphysical activities of the organs of the body, as they represent human experiences? The best of these metaphysical may be studied from the Book of Revelation, as applied to Gray's Anatomy. In what town or city would it be best to locate to apply this knowledge? Let's get in the proper shape to be able to apply it, before we find a place to apply it in. Apply it where you are at present, and then it may be known how to apply it in other places. Explain what is meant by those whose names are not written in the book of life. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Those who from the first, as he that is last to be bound, had the import to do evil. Then those who have followed closely after the flesh, or the indulgences of the emotions of the body alone, without the considerations of others, without, other than self's own interest, as is shown by the beast that is loosened, these are they whose names are not written, and these are they who are easily led about by every wind that bloweth, unstable as it were in those as represented in a portion or one of the churches, not hot, not cold, but allowing today, tomorrow, the circumstance of the moment to sway, without purpose, without direction, without the name. For there is only given under heaven that name whereby men may be saved, by their belief, their faith, their trust, their works in him. Know self, and self's relation to the Maker, for this is the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of understanding. As to how to study to do such, is to begin with the application of that which is now known as relating to such subjects, such work, such undertakings. And know that anything that is to be of value must be lived day by day. And in the reading, the studying, begin with such that is of the most elementary nature. Begin with the psychology of the own relationships with children, and of the home, of business associations. Then begin with the reading of, first, that which is found in that called the Holy Book. Here, one may see self's relationships, and know that that which was given as the first command is as unto self. Know, O man, or, as written, Know, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. And in whatsoever thou doest, if his presence, the Lord's presence be not with thee, may it not be lifted up, may ye not be lifted up. For he that abides in him need fear nothing without. The fear that comes always begins from within. For, if he be with thee, who can be against thee? Please analyze my development, mentally, spiritually and materially during past 3 months. And advise me what best now to do to further improve my ability, and approach to further my general equilibrium. As has so oft been given, find self and analyze what prompts the impulses in the various directions of activity. Not alone have these been, nor should anyone's activity alone be, for the immediate alone, or for the sustenance even of life as physical alone, but rather know that the self must be guided by that which is ever constructive in the experiences of all who are being guided, aided or contacted through each activity. For unless same is ever constructive in each phase of the activity, it must eventually turn and rend thee. Look into thine whole 7-8 years of associations, and see what has been the prompting formula of thine own self in thine associations. To follow the lead, to be guided by the lead, or has it been for self-exaltation, that there might be boastfulness here, there, or in this manner, or that self might be exalted in some position irrespective of who was affected by those activities in other directions? Then, as ye know that like begets like, as ye know what seed ye sow ye will reap the fruit of that sown, for men do not gather figs from thistles nor grapes from briars.